In this video, I'll be sharing 7 JRPGs I would give a 10 out of 10. Now, that doesn't mean that these games are perfect, no game is, but to me, these are games that when I look at, they execute what they're trying to do almost flawlessly. And when I look back at them, there's really no parts of the game where I go, oh man, but that one part. We all know what I'm talking about. What are some JRPGs you would give a 10 out of 10? Let me know in the comments. Now, before we get into the video, let me tell you about today's sponsor, AFK Arena. The game is currently celebrating its 4th anniversary with an awesome crossover event with characters from the hit anime Re:Zero. Right now, you can have Amelia and Rem join your team, and you can even have Rem as the Noble Tavern barmaid. I can't think of anyone else I'd want to serve me drinks. Now, the crossover event will include a ton of new content, as well as 100 free summons. And as for the game itself, it's a super fun idle RPG where you can collect a huge roster of characters, build up their equipment, and battle through a variety of challenging levels. My personal favorite character on my team right now is Mishka, a werebear tank. She has this awesome move where she transforms and then just belly flops on the enemy squad for big damage. Now, to join the Re:Zero event and add Amelia and Rem to your team, be sure to use my link to download the game and use codes AFKRE0 and LUCKY2023 for other free in-game items. Thanks once again to AFK Arena for sponsoring this video. Now, when you think of all-time great JRPGs, it's hard to have that conversation without Chrono Trigger. Now, I do think the term timeless gets overused a little bit, but to me, this is a truly timeless game. I actually played this for the first time recently within the last 6 years, and I was totally blown away. It had really compelling storytelling with the way you travel through time and all the different characters you interact with. It had a great combat system that was way ahead of its time back on the Super Nintendo. It has great pacing, really unique mechanics, and visuals that actually do really hold up super well. Now, for me, I think it holds up really well today and still is super fun, but it must have been absolutely mind-blowing when it originally released. I mean, there were so many times in the game where I would try to do something, I'm like, this game's a Super Nintendo game, I can't do it, but I would be able to do it, and it was really cool and surprising. But why is it a 10 out of 10? Well, outside of all the reasons I listed above, I just can't think of any flaws or negatives to it. It's a masterpiece of its time, and like I said, it still holds up incredibly well. Now, I do think it deserves a proper remaster on modern consoles and PC outside of just a lazy mobile port, so many more people can enjoy this incredible game. Now, most of the games on this list I tried to be objective about, but with Final Fantasy VII, I can't help but pull in personal feelings and nostalgia. Now, let's get this out of the way first. Obviously, the visuals don't hold up at all. They've got those blocky hands, it's low polygons. That early 3D era in general doesn't hold up very well, but I feel like the rest of the game holds up incredibly well. It has such a great cast of diverse characters and a really compelling story, not to mention really engaging combat with the materia system, so many different kinds of mini games, and truly timeless music. Now, one piece of game design that I don't think gets talked about enough is pacing, and I feel like Final Fantasy VII does it flawlessly. You're just never bored. You're constantly changing locations, getting new party members, interacting in one-off unique mini-games, and the game just constantly keeps you on your toes. And for my money, I think this is the strongest opening to any JRPG ever made. And it's hard to talk about this game and not address its enduring legacy. Obviously, we have the remake trilogy that we're in the process of experiencing right now, but also what Final Fantasy VII has meant to JRPGs. It was so many people's first experience with the genre and is considered by many to be their favorite game of all time. There may be some things about this game that don't hold up, but to me, Final Fantasy VII will always be a 10 out of 10. Now, sticking with Final Fantasy, let's talk about the greatest strategy RPG of all time, Final Fantasy Tactics. To me, this game just has it all. It has a great art style, both in-game with the character portraits and those new cutscenes added in the War of the Lions version. It also has incredible music, a compelling story, a huge roster of characters, but probably most importantly to me, it has unbelievable gameplay. One thing I think that really gets overlooked with modern strategy RPGs is the level design, and I feel like in Final Fantasy Tactics, there's always something really unique going on, whether it's some kind of choke point or some sort of levels in the terrain or ways that enemies can attack you. It's just so good here. Not to mention those mechanics, the ways you can kind of abuse it and get job levels by punching your own guys, and the job system in general and how you can customize your character. To me, just no two playthroughs are alike. Maybe one time you play with Rams as a knight, and next time you're like, you know what, I'm gonna mix it up and make him a black mage. That stuff is just so cool. The job system here is so flexible, and you can mix and match abilities in ways that you really can't in almost any other game. I absolutely love experimenting with that and seeing what kind of cool combinations I can come up with. And like I said in the opening, there really are no parts I dread or don't look forward to with this game. I mean, maybe Wii Graph because it's challenging, but that doesn't necessarily make it unfun. Going in, I always know, okay, well, this is going to be Wii Graph, it's going to be hard, I have to be ready for it. And in my opinion, I feel like there are fewer games deserving of a remaster to modern platforms. Yes, there is the mobile version, but this game is not where it matters most, on consoles and PC. Now, this was in the NVIDIA GeForce Now leak, and it wouldn't shock me at all if it got announced and released by the end of the year. Now, this is the last Final Fantasy game on the list, I promise, but we have to talk about Final Fantasy IX. Now, this game sort of had an interesting full circle moment. I remember when it first came out, people weren't really into it. They thought it was kind of kiddie and kind of weird because it was very different from Final Fantasy VII and VIII that had just come out. But I feel like over time, it's become very beloved, and some call it the best in the series. Now, the reasons I would give this game a 10 out of 10 are aplenty. I think it captures Final Fantasy's unique take on fantasy perfectly. It has so many unique different races. It has a really cool art design and look to the game. It has really just good vibes as you're walking around the different cities, the way characters interact with each other, everything is just perfect. And also, I think this has one of the best soundtracks in the entire series, and in my opinion has the best iteration of the Victory fanfare. Now, the story can be a little convoluted at times, but the characters, oh my god, the characters. Arguably the best cast in the entire franchise. First, you have Zidane. He's kind of this, kind of free spirit, thief, dagger wielder guy. He's super fun. Hard not to like Zidane. Then you have Garnet, who's a princess, but she doesn't really like what's happening, so she goes off and does her own thing. And then Steiner, who's only known the life of being a loyal knight servant. He kind of has to figure out what he wants in life as well. And maybe the best character in all of Final Fantasy is Vivi. He's this black mage, and once he kind of realized what's going on with his own existence, I just think that's really inspiring and really, really cool. He's such a deep and interesting character. Now, the combat system is a little basic, but I love how each character has a designated role. And the cool thing about the remaster is if you feel like the combat's too slow, well, hey, you can just turn up the speed and make it go faster. Now, speaking of remakes, remasters, and re-releases, Final Fantasy IX has had a rumored remake for several years, and it was on that NVIDIA GeForce Now leak, so I think that's really well deserved, and I think this can really bring this world in a modern way to a bigger audience, so I'm super excited to see what this remake ends up looking like. Maybe the most controversial game on this entire list is Valkyrie Chronicles. So why is it here, and why would I give it a 10 out of 10? Like I said in the opening, it's all about intention and execution. Like, what are the developers trying to do with this game, and how do they do it? To me, with Valkyrie Chronicles, I love what it was trying, and the execution to me was perfection. They're attempting to tell a war story and humanize it. A lot of strategy RPGs tell these grand scale political war dramas, and as a player, you don't often see the impact from the boots on the ground soldiers. Here, not only do you see it from the soldier's perspective, but also from the enemy. The game has an amazing opening sequence, and as the characters, you have this motivation to fight back against the enemy and cheer for the good guys. And there's even moments where you meet opposing troops and you have sympathy for them. It's just really beautiful. And speaking of beautiful, we got to talk about that art style. The whole game is presented in this like storybook format where you're constantly turning pages to read the chronicle of this game. And it has this really cool filter around the edges to kind of give it a unique look, not to mention that fantastic cel-shaded anime art style. And as for the gameplay, there's few games that do what it's trying to do. It's just a super unique take on strategy RPGs. Combat will play in real time, and you can move around your characters, hide behind obstacles, and then you actually have to aim with the weapons. To me, from top to bottom, not only is Valkyrie Chronicles one of the best games I've ever played, but is an easy 10 out of 10 for me. Now, what else is there for me to say that I haven't already said on this channel a million times about Persona 4 Golden? Well, it certainly has its flaws, but let me talk about why it's still a 10 out of 10 for me. It all starts with those characters. This is the best cast of characters in any game I've ever played. You just feel this great connection with them. They feel like real friends as you go day to day with the school stuff and do the dungeon crawling. You can't help but connect with them, and for me, I was sad to say goodbye to them at the end of the game. And also, the gameplay has this balance of doing the dungeon crawling and turn-based combat, and then going back to the life sim aspects. It's just so incredibly addictive. It has that one more day quality where you just want to do one more thing, and before you know it, it's 3 in the morning. Not to mention it has a very unique, that acid jazz kind of hip-hop vibe, and an overall very memorable soundtrack. Now, obviously the in-game visuals don't hold up very well. I mean, this is like a 15-year-old game at this point, but I feel like the character portraits do, which I feel like balances it out for me. This is really what matters most, is seeing the character portraits and kind of seeing their faces animate and stuff like that. that, so to me, I actually don't mind it that much. Now, what's cool about this is they further remaster the game for PC and modern consoles to make it even more playable. Persona 4 Golden is easily my favorite game of all time, will always be a 10 out of 10 for me, and I'm waiting for the game to come and topple it and take the mantle as my favorite game because it'll have to be something super special. Now, for the final game on this list, we have Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Donna. Now, infamously, I prefer Ys 9, which is not a popular opinion. Now, what's interesting is Ys 9 probably wouldn't get a 10 out of 10 for me, as it has problems, but it has higher highs than Ys 8, so that's kind of why I prefer it. But when I look at Ys 8, I can't really find any flaws in it. It has an incredible action combat system, has impeccable pacing, an incredible rocking soundtrack, and at some point you kind of get into this flow state as you're walking around the island, attacking enemies, collecting items, and just kind of rocking out to that soundtrack. There's very few experiences in gaming like that for me. In fact, I loved playing this game so much that I ended up learning how to speedrun it, and in fact, I ended up beating the game in under 2 hours. Now, to be clear, I never speedrun games, so you know this game is really special when I decide to want to learn it and play it over and over. In fact, I think I've beat this game probably over 100 times. And also, I feel like Ys is a series that only gets better over time, and I'm super excited to see what they do with Ys 10 Nordics and overall where the series goes from here. But for now, Ys 8 definitely deserves a 10 out of 10. Now, if you want to hear about some other JRPGs that I love, make sure you check out this video right here where I count down my favorite JRPGs from 2022. And special thanks to Reset Switch, Tyler Kuzawa, and the Miyazaki Man for supporting me over on Patreon. To get exclusive videos and other cool perks, consider supporting me over on patreon.com/thegaming shelf. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.